Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and right off the bat, I wanted to say Merry Christmas to all of you, or if you don't celebrate that, then just Happy Holidays in general. If you don't know, last year I did a video on Christmas as well. That was my first ever Division 3 video on the channel, and so I wanted to make it a bit of a tradition that, on Christmas every year, I wanted to try and make some sort of special video. So this one may not be as exciting as last year's, but I think it should be pretty interesting nonetheless. This is going to be basically my collection of evidence that I have pointing towards Division 3 being a reality and being something that the developers are currently working on. I've had people comment on my videos focusing on Division 3 in the past, saying that they don't believe me, that any of what I'm saying is true, and I'm not saying this is true, I'm just saying that I have evidence that I've collected personally that leads me to believe it is in fact true, and so I want to share that with you guys because some people have asked to see all that stuff, and I've pointed them towards my playlist in the past, but that doesn't really give the full scope, and so I wanted to make one collective video of the evidence that I've collected to date that points to this being a reality. Also, I apologize if you guys end up hearing construction in the background throughout this video. I've been trying to wait for them to finish to record this, but I've been waiting for like 2 hours, so at some point I just kind of have to go through and do it. So yeah, I'm sorry if you end up hearing that in the background while I am talking. Before we get into it, I have 3 quick things I want to preface. 1, this is entirely my speculation and my opinion, but everything I present here will be true facts, alright? I'm not going to make up some stuff and put it in here. Everything I say in here will be true, but some of my conclusions that I draw from that will be my own speculation, so take it all with a grain of salt. Secondly, I will only use public knowledge here. I will not use leaks from other YouTubers or other, insider information that some people may have put online or anything like that. This will be all stuff that you can go and see for yourself right now, or that happened publicly in the past. So yeah, that's all you will see here, and I want to keep that transparent because that, sticks with the fact that this isn't necessarily true, but it is all stuff that happened and you can go see it for yourself if that all makes sense. And 3, this will contain spoilers for Season 4. There was a leak that happened earlier this year, and I will be referencing that information in this video, so if you do not want to know those things, or if you haven't heard them yet, then you may not want to watch the entirety of this video, and if that turns out to be the case, then I'm sorry, but I do feel it is relevant for me to talk about that stuff in this video, so just wanted to give you a heads up there. And before we fully dive in, I just want to let you guys know that I just before recording this, I announced that my new weekly show called Proximity Coverage will be premiering next week on New Year's Eve, which is Thursday the 31st. I'm really excited for this. It's basically going to be a podcast style show I do every week, where I kind of give my, I spend the first half of the show giving my thoughts on a big central topic related to anything Division that you guys vote on. I will put up a vote every week, and then the top picked topic will be the one I talk about. And then after that, the second half of the show will be spent entirely answering questions from you guys that you submit. The questions can be about anything from Division 1, Division 2, or, potentially Division 3. We're not saying it's confirmed, but if you want to ask about stuff for the future of the game, you certainly can. And yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I put that up about half an hour ago, and I don't think I've received any questions yet, which slightly concerns me. So if you guys have any questions, certainly put them down in the comments of this video, in any of my videos, on that post, on Twitter, anywhere. Just be sure that you specify that you want it to be answered on Proximity Coverage specifically, so that I don't, end up mistakenly answering you there, and I can sort it into my questions for the thing. I'm really excited for it. Like I said, it will be premiering on New Year's Eve, so if you guys can show up and show some support on that first episode, that would mean a lot to me. I'm really excited for this, and I hope you guys are too. And if you have any questions you want me to answer, then definitely leave them here or wherever, like I was saying. I will devote as much time to it as I can, given how many I receive. So yeah, it'll be a fun experience, and I hope to be able to answer some of your guys' stuff. So really, anything Division related that you want me to talk about, whether it's like currently a certain meta that's going on, or my thoughts on a past system, or potentials for the future, anything, leave it, down below, wherever, and I will certainly answer it, and I will enjoy doing so. So do that, and I'm really excited. I hope you guys are too. With that 5-minute intro out of the way, let's get into the topic of this video, which is a timeline for my evidence that I've collected for the Division 3 potentially being a reality. So let's just get into it. The timeline begins in March of 2019, which was, of course, when Division 2 launched. And the first thing on this list, I have 12 items. The first thing is the positive launch reception plus the sales. If you do not remember, Division 2 had some really positive reviews come out at launch. It was helmed as being one of the greatest looter shooter launches of all time, compared to stuff like Division 1, Destiny 2, Destiny 1. Division 2 had a really strong presentation up front. Now, a few weeks in, we started to realize that that was a bit troubling when we could not access World Tier 5 until I believe it was mid to late April. and that was concerning. But the presentation up front, the initial reviews and everything pointed towards this game being really great, and it got some nice scores on things like Metacritic and all those different places. And while that doesn't necessarily, mean anything in the long run, what is important to take from that, along with the sales, which weren't as good as Division 1, if you don't remember, Division 1 ended up being, I think, the highest selling new IP title, video game of all time, which is a big record to have. Division 2 didn't do quite as well as that, but it did do quite well. And you can go back and look at the sales records that Ubisoft published a while back that said that Division 2, along with Division 1, sold over 10 million copies, which is no small feat. So what's the significance here? Well, they did announce, back when they first announced Division 2, what Julian Garrity made sure to note was that Division 2 had been in development since 1 week after Division 1 launched. And so, if you look at how Division 1 didn't get as positive reception or as good a scores as Division 2 did at launch. So if Ubisoft was willing, just based off of, reception and sales alone, if they were willing to greenlight a Division 2 a week after Division 1 launched, then it's very hard for me to believe in my mind that they would not have, probable cause to greenlight Division 3, shortly after Division 2 released, when it actually had a better reception than Division 1 did. Now, does that rule out that even if they did start Division 3, they didn't cancel it soon after or at some point later on? No, but I do think it is important to remember that that is what happened in the past, and I do think that it is very likely that the same thing happened, and that shortly after Division 2 came out, Ubisoft saw the reception, saw the sales, and they were like, okay, let's go right ahead for a third entry, get started on Massive, and that's what happened. So that's the first and arguably very important piece of evidence on my timeline. Second up, we jump forward quite a bit into October and, around that time of 2019. And that is when, we didn't know it at the time, but that is when Red Storm and Thylander both departed the project. If you don't know who those are, Red Storm was the primary PvP studio for the Division, and Frederick Thylander was a very prominent developer from Massive, and yeah, both of them were very core to the Division community. We saw them a lot on State of the Game. They were helming a lot of the post-launch stuff coming for Division 2, and both of them departed the project. Now, it is not known to this date, what kind of circumstances that was under. We don't know. People make it seem to be a lot of the time the developers and studios have their own say on what they go and work on. When you're under Ubisoft, when you're under that sort of corporate structure, it's not like you can just say, I'm done with Division 2. I'm going to go work on something else. It's not really how it works. But we don't know whether it was, we want you to go working on Division 3, we want you to work on Avatar, or in Red Storm's case, we want you to go work on some other IP. We don't know. But if I had to put my money on something, you have to remember that Red Storm has been working on the Division ever since before it came out in 2016. There are gameplay demonstrations of Division before it launched, the first game where Terry is talking to whoever's, being walked through. You can go back and see records of Red Storm being on the project before Division 1 ever launched. So for them to be working on it for, let's say, minimum 4 years, Red Storm has been with the Division. For Ubisoft to then just decide all of a sudden to take them off and put them on something else, it's not impossible, but I think it's unlikely. What I think is the more likely scenario is that they saw that PvP was kind of doomed. Division 2's core mechanics didn't support healthy or fun PvP, and so they're like, okay, we want you to depart now, and we want you to start working on the foundations of Division 3 to be able to create a better PvP experience from the get-go. Maybe that's a bit of idealism in me, and maybe that's because I'm a PvP player at heart, but I believe that that is what happened, and that they have been working on that, maybe not the entire time, but at least at some point from TU6 to now, that has been what they are working on. And we will come back to Red Storm later on as for some more recent activities that they have had going. As for Thylander, I'm not as sure on this one. I don't know whether he could have possibly went to work on Avatar at the time. I don't know if he did go to work on Division 3 or some other stuff, but again, we will come back to him later because he has been becoming more prominent more recently. But yeah, I'm not sure on him, but he did depart the project around TU6, and it is probable that he went to start working on a Division 3 if Ubisoft did in fact greenlight it, that early on into Division 2's life cycle. Moving on to the third piece of evidence on my timeline. This one is a bit less known. I don't know how many people have taken note of this or even know about it, but in the Warlords of New York credits, which you can go and watch in-game right now, there is notably a person missing from those credits, and that is Matthias Carlson. Now, if you don't know who he is the game director that has been with the Division. He was the game director of both Division 1 and Division 2, so he's been around for a good, 4 or 5 years. His name is not on the credits of Warlords of New York. Now, Julian Garrity's is. He's the creative director at Massive and kind of oversees a lot of the Division-related projects. And also Drew Reckner is, who, rip to Drew. We've never seen him on State of the Game ever since Warlord, sadly. I love that guy. But his name is on there as I believe it's an associate game director. But the core game director for this game, Matthias Carlson's name is not on the Warlord's credits. Now, what does that mean? Doesn't have to mean anything. What I think it means is that he was not part of any post-launch Division 2 stuff, and he was probably reassigned to Division 3 as soon as it got greenlit, soon after launch, which is what my theory of what happened. So, again, doesn't necessarily signify anything, but I think it is an important thing to take note of nonetheless. Next up, we fast travel forward to TU10, the PTS for TU10, where, if you don't remember this, and again, this is your final spoiler warning to get out, we had some big Year 2 story leaks come out. We got the plot lines of Seasons 2, 3, and 4 all revealed, and we got early confirmation that the Summit, or at that point it was known as Skyscraper, was going to come to the game. The big things to take out of that, if you don't know what's going to happen at the end of Season 4, last chance, get out of here. Fei Lao is not going to die, or at least, I guess we don't technically know that. It is rumored that she's going to escape, but in the process of her manhunt mission, which is going to be at Camp White Oak, which you can now see in the trailer that they released when Season 4 dropped, that she is going to kill President Ellis, who, reminder, escaped from us at the original Camp White Oak mission. She's going to kill him, and she's going to blame the Division on it. Now, the reason that's important is because the Division still technically serves under the president. Even though we know he's a traitor, the country necessarily doesn't, and, the law states that the Division operates under the president. So for us to kill him would be basically disavowing our country and our law. So she kills him, and presumably we get flagged as rogue, and that's a huge thing. That's a major, major story beat that they're putting at the end of Season 4, at the end of Division 2, Year 2. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean Division 3. It could mean that we're going to get another expansion in March that then deals with the fallout of those events. But what I would personally think, and what I would personally like to see, is that is, saved and kept for the Division 3's main storyline, because it would be such an awesome thing. I've talked about this in past videos, but there's so much they could do with that premise on a next-gen game, on a whole new project, that could be really special and really cool. But again, it does not rule out, and I have not ruled out in my mind, that another expansion in March is not impossible. I think it could very well happen. I think Division 3 is more likely, and that is what I would like to happen, more preferably, but it could mean that. But yeah, that story beat that's coming at the end of Season 4 is major, and it certainly means that they're not dropping the Division after Season 4, like some people have suggested or rumored. That I don't think that's going to happen. You're either going to see another big expansion, or we're going to get Division 3, announced and have it come out in probably 2022. So again, another important thing to note there. Fast forward to the Ubisoft Forward event that I believe happened in August. It was their second one, and in this event, when they got to the Division 2, they both confirmed the leaks, which so far have been proven true. If you didn't know, both the Season 2 and 3 and Skyscraper things all came true. So it's basically confirmed that Season 4 ending will in fact happen. They confirmed those, as well as they revealed the expedited season timeline, which I think is a very important detail to take note of. If you didn't know, when the seasons first launched, there was always a buffer week in between both Season 1 when it first came out from when Warlords dropped to then, and in between Season 1 and 2, there was a week of downtime before the next season launched. But what they announced here was that Season 3 would kick off immediately when Season 2 ended, and there was no buffer between Season 3 and 4. They didn't say it then, but that is what has since happened. Now, why that's important is I think they originally designed it so that there would be a buffer in between these seasons for whatever design reason, but them switching to there being an automatic transition between them has expedited the timeline so that Season 4 and the main Fei Lao mission ends right at the start of February. Now, why that's important is because if you don't remember, Warlords of New York was announced right at the start of February of 2020, which gave them 1 month to market and sell Warlords of New York, which came out right at the start of March. So this points, I would say, a bit more towards there being an expansion 2 for the Division 2, but it also doesn't rule out that at the start of February, we get the Fei Lao mission, that big event happens, and then they tease there's going to be some sort of big announcement for a month leading up to the beginning of March, where we see a State of the Game with Julian, with Matthias, with everyone, and then they announce Division 3. I'm going to do a video a bit closer to February 9th where I give my final prediction on what's going to happen in terms of that, but I would say those are the two big, possibilities that this suggests, and again, it is just another important detail to take under the belt and under consideration when thinking about the Division 3 and the future of the franchise. Next up on the list is that the confirmation, this came soon after the Forward event, was the confirmation / announcement that there would be no next-gen optimization for the Division 2. Now, in my mind, it doesn't matter that this came eventually, right? Because now we know that when they canceled the Nightmare event, they then went ahead and said, okay, we are going to do an optimization. In my mind, they only did that because they canceled the Nightmare event and they wanted to have some sort of counterbalance to the negative reaction of that. I don't know if that's true. We're probably never going to get confirmation if that's true. But in my mind, if they had plans to continue the Division 2 long term, release a second expansion, maybe a third expansion, keep it going for years, you would update the game for next gen. You would have a patch that would give you 60 frames from the start so that, more people would be interested, so that runs as best it could. If they had the plans to do that, they would have had that in the books a long time before, and they would have announced a next-gen optimization, when it first came up. But they said that there wasn't going to be one, and so in my mind, that means that their plans are to scrap the division, not scrap it, but do the same thing with Division 1, where it went into maintenance mode during Year 3, and they started working more heavily towards the Division 2. So I think that this means that Division 3 is really what's next on the horizon for them, and Division 2 will be kind of sunsetted, come next year. But we'll just have to wait and see on that. Again, another important thing to note. All right, next up, these next few items are all going to be around the pre-212 era, so just keep that in mind as we move forward here. The big one here is that several job listings popped up both at Massive and all of the partner studios that were tied to Division 2, those being Red Storm, Reflections, Leamington, I think is one of them. So there were quite a few of these, right? And they all had job listings pop up for a, quote, unannounced action RPG shooter title, a next-gen experience. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Is it impossible that Massive got a third IP to work on? No, but I highly doubt that with Division, with Avatar, which are both major titles, that they're going to take on another game. Now, is it possible that they're ditching Division and moving on to a new IP that's in the same genre of the action RPG shooter? It's not impossible, but given what we just talked about with the Season 4 ending, I really doubt it. So I think this just points to that all these studios, including Massive, are now hiring for Division 3. That's what I think it points to. Simple as that. Which again would line up with the same kind of timeline from Division 1 to 2 when they started dropping coverage for the Division 1, putting more of their resources and effort on Division 2 to ramp it up for that 3-year release, which in Division 3's case would put it coming out at March 2022. Next up, also in the pre-212 era, there was a survey that went out that was kind of a hot topic a few weeks ago talking about mobile, an interest for mobile regarding the survey said Division 2, but if they were talking for Division 3, obviously they wouldn't say that on there because it's not announced, but it was basically talking about, would you be interested in playing Division 2 on mobile? And there were a ton of questions about what sort of features would be most important for you to come over, audio levels, visual fidelity, ease of access of controls, that kind of stuff. The only thing that I really think is important to note here is that before Division 1 came out, it's of course pretty famous by now that there was going to be a mobile app where you could control a drone that you could fight alongside your teammates in game with, that you could bring on missions, you could bring, assumedly into PvP and all that kind of stuff. So that was a thing that was going to be there for Division 1, but it was cut. Now, another thing that was going to be in Division 1 were drones overall. There was going to be a drone, I presume a skill that you could use for yourself that then didn't make it into the game. Well, now in Division 2, we have those drones that were cut from Division 1. I don't know what the reasons were for them being cut in the first place, whether the AI wasn't there or for other reasons, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they first brought in drones, and now in Division 3, they're finally ready to bring a mobile app in that you could then play alongside with your teammates. I don't know how it will work entirely. I think they could certainly do it. Maybe it's not necessarily where the drone is doing a ton of damage or doing a ton of extra things, but maybe it's more of a utility thing where the person playing can connect into the comms and be like, okay, I see 3 enemies over here that you might not see without a pulse or something like that. They could do stuff like that. And I think it could certainly work for, that sort of next gen experience. So maybe they're just gauging whether or not people really want to see that still in Division 3. So a very interesting thing for sure. And then the last bit here that was still in the pre-212 era was when Red Storm changed their Twitter banner to a Division Rogue logo. Before it was apparently, from what I heard from others, it was just the Red Storm logo, but you can go see it right now on Twitter. Their current banner is a coin that they were given for their involvement on Division 2, and it shows a Division, Rogue logo. Very interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could just be that they changed it, but I think it's significant alongside the fact that Terry, who is the creative director at Red Storm and was kind of our main PvP guy to talk to before they left the project, he has also been returning to a lot of Division-related conversations on Twitter. He's been liking a lot of Division stuff. It may not be as much now as when they first changed the banner, but these two events kind of coincided, where he started liking Division posts. He made some comments on some Division 3 threads where he was like, fun little conversation you guys are having here, wink wink. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, and so I think those two things in tandem happening at the same time, I think it points to them being back on the Division franchise. Some people said Division 2. I don't think they're going to be back for Division 2. I don't think Division 2 is getting a whole lot more content, but I think it definitely means that they're working on Division 3, and if my theory is true, they have been working on the PvP for that for a long time, but we'll just have to wait and see. But again, something very important and, interesting to note indeed. Next up, we got the announcement that the optimization station would be returning for TU12. In my book, in my opinion, the introduction of that just seals the deal that Division 2 is done. Because if you plan on releasing another expansion and more content, why would you bring in a station that lets you god roll your gear? That just shortens the lifespan of how long someone is going to play the game if they can max out all their builds. Now, of course, we know now that the costs are so high that it's unlikely that someone's even going to get One Piece maxed out on that thing, but I think that aside, the concept of bringing in the optimization station and what that means for, mine and other players' mindsets, I think that's the more important takeaway here. Plus, if you think about it, TU12 came out in the exact same time slot that 1.8 came out for the Division 1, which was its final big update. 1.8 was the final update there and came out in the December of the following year of the game's launch, and TU12 came out December the following year of the game's launch. And both of those brought the optimization station. Now in Division 1's case, soon after that, they announced Division 2, and they said Division 1 was going to be more on autopilot mode. Now we just wait and see if the same thing is going to happen here, if they're going to announce Division 3, and I think that is what this is pointing towards. But another piece of evidence to take under consideration. Alright, second to last thing here is that several devs, including Thylander, who we mentioned earlier, and some other ones have been beginning to return back to Division-related conversations on Twitter. If you go on Thylander's, replies to tweets and you scroll down a bit, you'll see that over the last few weeks, he's been engaging with a lot more Division-related discussions, whereas previously, he was almost like asking people to stop talking to him about the Division. Does it mean anything? No. He's still assigned on his Twitter bio, it still says he's a massive and all that, so whether he went to Avatar at some point, whether he went to Division 3 as soon as he left Division 2, who knows, but I think that this certainly means that he's, returning to be more engaged in the Division, and if they're ramping up production on Division 3, maybe he's trying to gauge, community interest on different topics about the Division, who knows, but again, an interesting thing to take note of, and I think along with Terry coming back and doing the same thing around the same timeline, as well as these other devs, it's certainly something to take under consideration. And I should note that also around this time, Bruce, who was, from all the way from, I want to say, TU9 up until TU11, Bruce is a pretty prominent guy we would see on State of the Game. He was the main coordinator for PvP stuff. He's now basically gone from the community. I talked to him, I reached out to him the other week, you can go see on his Twitter, I asked him, are you still working on the Division 2? We haven't heard from you in a long time. And his response was basically, I'm not at liberty to talk about what I'm working on right now, but when I can, I will share more. Now, does that mean that he is off the Division 2? Not necessarily. If there is another expansion coming in March, it's very likely that he's working on that, and he obviously can't talk about that. But I think it's more likely that he's moved on to working on the Division 3. Alright, and the final piece of evidence on my list is one that happened just recently, but I still thought it was very important to be added onto this collection of evidence, and that is that in the Season 4 story on the first man on target of Season 4 Viper, when you listen to the audio lines that that you collect as you progress through the manhunt, you learn that she is part of a supposed third wave of agents. There's a group of Division agents that has not been activated yet by the government or by whoever controlled CSHD beyond the president, and so she joined the Black Tusk because she was not activated and she was just being an unused asset. Why is this important? Well, turning back to the story that is going to happen, at the end of the season with Faye killing the president, it's very likely that for either an Expansion 2 or a Division 3 story, we see the, Division 2 agents that we play, the rogue agents now, on the run because they've been, unlawfully, or they, not unlawfully, but they've been unwillingly flagged rogue, are now being hunted down by a freshly activated third wave. So whether this turns out to be just a story beat where that's who you're facing, or, you know, maybe there's some sort of system where you can choose at the start of the game whether you want to take part of these rogue agents from Division 2 or this new third wave. Something like that, or something in some other way where these third wave agents are going to be part of it, I think is very likely. And it's they didn't put it in there for no reason. Let's just say that. It's not a detail that they just wanted to create and throw into Season 4. I think it certainly has relevance, and what that relevance is, we'll just have to wait and see, but I think it is most likely related to the Division 3. And that is going to do it, guys, for my presentation of the evidence that I have personally collected from, again, all public information about why a Division 3 could potentially be in the works right now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this was a pretty long video, so if you're still here, I appreciate you sticking through it. But again, I thought this was important to make because I have had people in the past question my what evidence I'm citing when I say that I think Division 3 is in production. Well, there it is. I just laid it all out. Those 12 main pieces of evidence are why I believe Division 3 is in the works. On top of that, just because Ubisoft is, Ubisoft, and they like sequels more than expansions. So that alone, would probably seal it for me. But those things on top of it just, really hammered home that I think Division 3 is in the works, and hopefully before too long we can get confirmation of that so I can stop talking in potentials and start talking in absolutes. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on to be updated every time I upload. Certainly let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. Do you agree with my reasoning of why these things point towards a potential Division 3? Are you still convinced that maybe Division 2 is it for the franchise, or that they're moving forward with an expansion 2 or something like that? Let me know what you think and what your predictions are down below. Again, I am going to make a final predictions on the future of this franchise closer to that Fey mission dropping, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, let me know your preliminary thoughts here. I'm interested what you guys have to say. Just so you guys know, this will probably be my last video until my first episode of Proximity Coverage drops next week on the 31st, so keep an eye out for that, certainly. And please, 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 if you have any questions that you want me to answer on that video, leave them in the comments here, or on that post, or on Twitter, wherever. I want to, have as many of you guys be participating in that as possible. And yeah, I want to answer some stuff, so definitely let me know your questions there, here, wherever, and I will certainly answer them on the show as long as they are Division related and what I laid out earlier in the video. So yeah, thanks again everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, stay safe out there, and until the next one guys, RogueGold, out.